The transport shuttle docked at Nexus Prime with a soft hiss. Kim Do-yeon stepped out carrying his single bag and looked around the massive space station. Everything was huge and shiny. The walls were made of some kind of blue metal that reflected light in strange ways. Tall alien beings walked past him without looking down. Their skin was bright blue, and they wore fancy clothes with gold decorations. Do-yeon was not impressed by the fancy appearance. He had seen many space stations during his years in the fleet. This one was bigger than most, but it had the same basic design. He could already spot several maintenance panels that needed attention. Just from walking through the main corridor, a thin Valtharian approached him. The alien was almost 3 meters tall with long arms and a narrow face. His clothes were dark purple with silver patterns. He looked down at Do-yeon like he was examining an insect. "You must be the new human cleaner," the Valtharian said. His voice was high and musical, but there was no warmth in it. "I am Administrator Korvac. Follow me," Do-yeon nodded politely. "Yes, sir," Kim Do-yeon reporting for duty. Korvac turned and walked away quickly. His long legs meant Do-yeon had to hurry too. "Keep up." They passed through several corridors filled with busy aliens. Most were Valtharians, but Do-yeon saw other species too. There were short furry beings with big eyes and tall thin creatures that looked like walking trees. "The executive tower is where you will work," Korvac explained as they walked. "Only the most important beings live and work there. You will clean their offices and living spaces. You will not speak to them unless they speak to you first. You will not touch anything except what needs cleaning. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir," Do-yeon replied. He had heard similar rules before. Important people always wanted to pretend the help was invisible. They entered a lift that shot upward so fast Do-yeon felt his stomach drop. When the doors opened, they were at the top of the station. The executive tower was even fancier than the lower levels. The walls were covered with paintings and decorations from different worlds. Soft music played from hidden speakers. "Your supervisor is Cleaning Manager Vorth," Korvac said. "He will explain your duties. Remember human you are here because we need someone for the simple work. Do not try to do anything beyond your abilities." Korvac left him standing in a supply room. The room was small and cramped compared to the grand spaces outside. Metal shelves held cleaning supplies and tools. Most of the equipment looked old and basic. Do-yeon examined some of the tools and frowned. They were not very efficient designs. Manager Vorth appeared a few minutes later. He was shorter than Korvac, but still much taller than Do-yeon. His blue skin had darker spots and his eyes were bright yellow. He wore a simple gray uniform with a manager badge. "So you are the new human," Vorth said. He sounded tired. "I hope you work better than the last one. He quit after 2 weeks. Said the job was too hard." "I will do my best, sir," Do-yeon said. Vorth showed him around the executive level. There were 50 offices and 20 luxury apartments. Each space was decorated with expensive art and furniture. The Valtharian executives lived and worked in incredible comfort. "You will clean all of this every day," Vorth explained. "Start at dawn and finish before evening. The executives do not want to see you during their important meetings. Stay out of their way." Do-yeon looked at the massive area he was supposed to clean alone. It would be almost impossible to do properly in one day with the basic tools they had given him. But he just nodded and said nothing. "Questions?" Vorth asked. "Where can I find technical manuals for the station systems?" Do-yeon asked. Vorth looked surprised. "Why would you need those? You are just cleaning." "Sometimes cleaning equipment connects to station systems. I want to make sure I do not cause any problems." "Humans and their strange questions," Vorth muttered. "There is a computer terminal in your room. You can access basic information there. But do not waste time reading when you should be working." Do-yeon was given a small room near the service areas. It had a bed, a desk, and a computer terminal. The room was clean but very plain compared to the luxury above. He did not mind. He had lived in much worse places during his military service. That evening Do-yeon sat at the computer and began reading. The technical manuals were available but buried deep in the system files. Most people would never find them. But Do-yun had learned how to navigate complex computer systems during his engineering training. He discovered that Nexus Prime was an impressive station, but it had serious problems. The maintenance schedules were behind by months. Several safety systems had minor faults that were being ignored. The air recycling system was working at only 70% efficiency. Do-yun made notes as he read. He had always been good at spotting problems and finding solutions. It was what made him a good engineer before he became a cleaner. The next morning he began his cleaning duties early. As he worked, he paid attention to everything around him. He noticed that some air vents were making strange noises. Several wall panels were loose. The lighting in some areas flickered occasionally. The Veltharian executives barely looked at him as he cleaned their offices. They talked loudly about important business deals and political meetings. They acted like Do-yun was a piece of furniture. This was normal. Most wealthy beings treated service workers the same way, but Do-yun listened to their conversations while he worked. He learned about the station operations and the personalities of different executives. Information was always useful, even if you were just a cleaner dot by the end of his first week. Do-yun had mapped out all the maintenance problems in the executive tower. He knew which systems were failing and which ones needed attention. He also knew which executives were competent and which ones were just pretending to be important. Lord Vector was the chief administrator of the entire station. He was the tallest Veltharian Do-yun had seen, with bright blue skin and gold decorations covering his clothes. Vector spent most of his time in meetings where he talked about how superior Veltharian culture was to other species. Do-yun was cleaning outside Vector's office when he heard the Lord talking to his assistants. "The new human cleaner seems adequate," Vector said. "But I think our guests next month would enjoy seeing how primitive humans really are. Perhaps we should give him a special challenge." The assistants laughed. "An excellent idea, Lord Vector. It would be entertaining to watch a human struggle with real work." Do-yun continued cleaning and said nothing. But he filed away the information for later. He had learned long ago that underestimating humans was usually a mistake. 3 weeks into his job, Do-yun had settled into a routine. He woke before dawn and finished cleaning the executive tower before most of the Veltharians arrived for work. This gave him time to study the station systems and make small repairs that nobody noticed. The loose wall panels were now secure. The flickering lights worked properly. The strange noises from the air vents had stopped. Do-yun did these fixes quietly during his cleaning time. He used basic tools and spare parts. He found in storage rooms that Manager Vorth was pleased that everything looked cleaner than before, but he did not know why. The executives noticed that their offices felt more comfortable, but they assumed it was because the human was doing better cleaning work. Only Do-yun knew that he was actually maintaining and repairing the systems while he cleaned his engineering. Knowledge made him see problems that others missed. But he kept this knowledge to himself. On a busy morning, Lord Vector called a meeting of all department heads. Do-yun was cleaning the conference room when they arrived. The Veltharian executives filed in wearing their finest clothes. Their blue skin gleamed under the bright lights, and their gold decorations jingled as they walked. "Remain here, human," Vector commanded when Do-yun started to leave. "Continue your work quietly." Do-yun nodded and began polishing the long table. The executives talked as if he was not there. "Next month we host the grand reception," Vector announced. "Ambassadors from the Zephyrian Council, the Korgan Empire, and the Threnody Alliance will visit us. This is our chance to show them Veltharian superiority." The other executives murmured approval. Department head Milvac spoke up. "The diplomatic wing is prepared, Lord Vector. All protocols have been reviewed." "Excellent," Vector replied. "But I want to add something special to the reception. Something that will demonstrate the natural differences between species." Do-yun continued polishing, but he listened carefully. Vector's tone suggested he was planning something unpleasant. "I propose we give our human cleaner a special task." Vector continued. During the reception, he will be responsible for maintaining the entire executive level alone. All other maintenance staff will be reassigned to other duties. Several executives looked confused. Lord Vector, said Administrator Korvac, that is impossible. It takes 6 workers to maintain this level during normal operations. During a reception with hundreds of guests, it would take at least 12. Vector smiled coldly. Exactly. The human will fail spectacularly. Our guests will see how primitive and incompetent humans really are. It will be excellent entertainment and a perfect demonstration of why Veltharians are the natural leaders of the galaxy. The room filled with laughter. The executives thought this was a wonderful idea. They began discussing how amusing it would be to watch a human struggle and fail in front of important alien dignitaries. Do-Yun kept polishing the table, but his mind was working quickly. This was obviously a trap designed to humiliate him and all humans. But traps could be turned against those who set them if you were clever enough. After the meeting ended, Do-Yun continued his normal duties. But now he had a timeline. The grand reception was exactly 4 weeks away. That gave him time to prepare for Vector's challenge. During his lunch break, Do-Yun went to the maintenance levels where the other workers ate their meals. The cafeteria was a simple room with metal tables and basic food dispensers. It was nothing like the fancy restaurants in the executive areas. Park Minsu sat at a corner table eating his meal alone. Minsu was another human who worked in the cargo bays. He had been on the station for 2 years and knew how things worked. He was older than Do-Yun, with gray hair and tired eyes. Mind if I sit here? Do-Yun asked. Minsu looked up and nodded. You are the new cleaner from the executive tower? How are they treating you up there? About what you would expect, Do-Yun replied. He sat down with his food tray. Can I ask you something? How do the Veltharians usually treat humans who fail at their jobs? Minsu's expression became serious. They make examples of them. Public humiliation, then immediate deportation. Why? Are you having problems? Do-Yun explained what he had overheard in the conference room. Minsu listened with growing anger. Those arrogant blue bastards, Minsu muttered. They love making humans look bad. The last human cleaner who worked your job quit because they kept giving him impossible tasks. What if someone did not fail? Do-Yun asked. What if they succeeded at an impossible task? Minsu laughed bitterly. That will never happen. They designed these challenges to be impossible. But hypothetically, if a human succeeded at something they said could not be done, it would embarrass them badly. Veltharians hate being proven wrong, especially in front of other species. 2 other workers joined their table. That was an insectoid, with 6 arms and compound eyes. His species was good with mechanical work. Gorak was a reptilian with thick scales and powerful claws. He worked in heavy construction. We heard about Vector's plan, Dex said. His voice buzzed like an angry bee. It is cruel even for Veltharians. The whole station knows by now, Gorak added. Word spreads fast in the maintenance levels. Everyone thinks you are being set up to fail. Would you help me if I had a plan? Do-Yun asked. The 3 aliens looked at each other. Then Minsu shook his head. Kid, I appreciate what you are thinking, but this is not a fight you can win. Take my advice, get sick on reception day. Let them find someone else to humiliate. I cannot do that, Do-Yun said quietly. If I run away now, every human who comes after me will face worse treatment. Sometimes you have to make a stand. After lunch, Do-Yun returned to the executive tower, but instead of just cleaning, he began studying the level more carefully. He timed how long each task took. He measured distances between rooms. He calculated supply requirements and identified bottleneck points where work would slow down. That evening, he accessed the station computer again. This time, he looked up information about the visiting alien species. The Zephyrians valued efficiency and precision. The Korgans respected strength and determination. The Threnody appreciated intelligence and creativity. All 3 species had different values than the Veltharians. They might not automatically assume that humans were inferior. but they would judge based on what they saw during the reception. Over. The next few days, Do-yeon continued his research. He learned about the station's complete layout and systems. He studied the guest list for the reception and read about each important visitor. He calculated exactly what would be required to maintain the executive level during the event. The task was truly impossible using normal methods and standard equipment. But Do-yeon was not planning to use normal methods. In the communications section of the station worked Lee Sahi. She was a young human woman who handled diplomatic messages and translation services. Her job required her to be smart and well-educated. She spoke 6 alien languages fluently. Sahi had heard the rumors about Vector's plan. She found Do-yeon in the executive tower one evening when he was working late. "You are Kim Do-yeon, right?" she asked. "The cleaner who is going to be challenged at the reception?" "Yes," Do-yeon replied. "Can I help you with something?" "I wanted to warn you," Sahi said. "Lord Vector has been telling everyone about his plan. He is expecting you to fail, and he wants as many people as possible to witness it. The whole thing will be recorded and broadcast throughout the station." Do-yeon nodded calmly. "Thank you for the warning. I appreciate it." Sahi looked surprised by his calm reaction. "Are you not worried? This challenge is designed to be impossible." "Impossible things sometimes become possible when you approach them differently," Do-yeon said. "But I may need help from someone in communications when the time comes." "What kind of help?" "The kind that ensures the right people see what really happens during the reception." Sahi studied his face carefully. There was something about this quiet man that made her think he was more than just a simple cleaner. "If you have a real plan, I will help you," she said finally. "I'm tired of watching humans be humiliated for entertainment." Do-yeon smiled for the first time since arriving at the station. "Then we should probably start planning." The day of the grand reception arrived with great fanfare. Nexus Prime buzzed with activity as 3 diplomatic ships docked at the main ports. Alien dignitaries from across the galaxy stepped onto the station wearing their finest ceremonial clothes and carrying gifts for their Veltharian hosts. Do-yeon woke before dawn as usual, but today felt different. He had spent 4 weeks preparing for this moment. His small room was filled with detailed plans, system diagrams, and supply calculations. Everything was ready. He dressed in his simple gray cleaning uniform and made his way to the executive tower. The corridors were already busy with Veltharian staff making final preparations. Decorative banners hung from the walls and the air smelled of exotic flowers from a dozen different worlds. Lord Vector stood in the main reception hall giving orders to his assistants. He wore his most impressive ceremonial robes covered with gold and silver patterns. His blue skin had been polished until it gleamed under the bright lights. "Ah, the human arrives," Vector announced loudly when he saw Do-yeon. Perfect timing. Other Veltharians gathered around. They all looked excited about what was going to happen. Some held recording devices to capture the expected failure. "Citizens and honored guests," Vector called out. His voice carried clearly through the hall. "Today we will witness a demonstration of species capabilities. This human has volunteered to maintain our entire executive level during the reception." A crowd was forming. Diplomatic staff from the visiting ships had arrived early and they watched with interest. Do-yeon recognized several important figures from his research. Ambassador Tyleth of the Zephyrian Council stood near the front. Her species looked like tall, graceful birds with silver feathers and bright, intelligent eyes. General Korax from the Korgan Empire was easy to spot. His people were large and muscular with thick gray skin and small eyes. They valued strength and direct action above everything else. The Threnody delegation was led by Scholar Venom. His species had long, thin bodies with multiple arms and oversized heads. They were known throughout the galaxy for their intelligence and scientific achievements. "The challenge begins now," Vector announced. "The human has until sunset to complete all maintenance tasks for this level. If he succeeds, we will acknowledge human capabilities. If he fails as expected, it will demonstrate the natural order of species hierarchy." The crowd murmured among themselves. Some seemed excited by the entertainment. Others looked uncomfortable with the obvious setup. I understand. The challenge, Lord Vector, Do-Yun said calmly. May I begin? Of course, Vector replied with a cruel smile. We will all watch with great interest. Do-Yun bowed politely, then walked to his supply cart. The cart looked the same as always, but he had made several modifications over the past weeks. Hidden compartments held specialized tools he had built from spare parts. His cleaning supplies had been carefully selected for maximum efficiency. He began working in the main reception hall where the crowd could watch him, but instead of starting with simple cleaning tasks, he pulled out a device that looked like a standard sensor scanner. What is he doing? Someone in the crowd asked. Du Hyun was actually running a complete diagnostic of the hall's environmental systems. The device he held was something he had built himself using components from broken equipment. It could analyze air quality, temperature, control, lighting efficiency, and power distribution all at once. The scanner beeped softly and displayed readings on its small screen. Do-Yun frowned as he read the data. Lord Vector, he said politely, I have detected a problem with the air recycling system in this hall. The oxygen level is going to drop dangerously low when the hall fills with guests. Vector looked annoyed. Impossible. Our systems are perfect. Perhaps you could have your engineers check? Do-Yun suggested. It would be unfortunate if the ambassadors became ill during the reception. General Korak stepped forward. What kind of problem, human? The intake filters are clogged and the circulation pumps are running at only 60% efficiency. Do-Yun explained. With this many people in an enclosed space, the oxygen will be depleted within 2 hours. Scholar Venom's large eyes focused on Do-Yun with new interest. You can determine this with that device? Yes, sir. The readings are quite clear. Lord Vector looked uncomfortable. He called over Chief Engineer Malvik. Check the air systems immediately. Malvik hurried away with 2 assistants. While they worked, Do-Yun continued his tasks. But everything he did seemed to reveal new problems that the Veltharians had been ignoring. In the dining area, he discovered that the food preservation units were malfunctioning. The temperature was too warm and several dishes could spoil before the evening meal. In the conference rooms, he found that the holographic display systems had faulty connections that would cause them to fail during important presentations. In the guest quarters, he identified a water recycling problem that would leave half the visiting diplomats without proper sanitation. Each time Do-Yun reported a problem, he also provided a solution. He had spare parts and tools ready. He knew exactly how to fix each issue because he had been studying the station systems for weeks. This is remarkable, Ambassador Tylef said to her aide. The human is finding problems that should have been caught during routine maintenance. Chief Engineer Malvik returned looking embarrassed. Lord Vector, the human is correct about the air systems. We need immediate repairs. Then fix it, Vector snapped. We cannot, sir. The replacement parts are not in stock. We ordered them months ago, but the shipment was delayed. Do-Yun looked up from his work. I believe I can provide a temporary solution if you would like. All eyes turned to him. Malvik looked skeptical. You have replacement parts? Not exactly. But I can modify the existing system to improve efficiency by 40%. That should be enough for today's event. A human cannot possibly understand our advanced engineering, Malvik protested. General Korax crossed his arms. Let him try. If he fails, nothing is lost. If he succeeds, your reputation is already damaged. Malvik had no choice but to agree. Do-Yun opened one of his hidden compartments and pulled out tools that made the watching engineers gasp. They were precisely crafted instruments that looked far more advanced than anything a simple cleaner should own. Where did you get those? Malvik demanded. I made them, Do-Yun replied simply. Standard tools are not always sufficient for complex repairs. He went to work on the air recycling system. His hands moved with practiced skill as he reconfigured connections and adjusted flow regulators. The crowd watched in fascination as he transformed malfunctioning equipment into an efficient system. When he finished, the air in the hall immediately felt fresher and cleaner. The environmental readings on his scanner showed normal levels for the first time in months. Incredible, Scholar Venom murmured. He improved efficiency by exactly 42%, just as he predicted. Ambassador Tyleth was taking notes on a small device. Most impressive. The Zephyrian Council values this kind of precision and competence. Lord. Vector looked angry, but he could not complain. The human was succeeding at the challenge and making the station better in the process. Do-Yun continued working through the executive level. Each task revealed his deep understanding of the station's systems. He did not just clean surfaces. He optimized operations and fixed problems that had been ignored for years. The crowd of observers grew larger as word spread throughout the station. Aliens from many different species came to watch the human who was making Veltharian engineers. Looking competent. By midday, it was clear that this was not going as Lord Vector had planned. Instead of demonstrating human inferiority, the challenge was proving human capabilities. The visiting diplomats were asking pointed questions about why such obvious problems had been allowed to persist, but Vector was not ready to give up. If the human was succeeding too well, then perhaps it was time to make the challenge more difficult. He waited until Do-Yun was working alone in a side corridor, then approached with several assistants. Human, Vector said quietly. I think your performance today has been adequate. Perhaps we should end the challenge now. Do-Yun looked up from the wall panel he was repairing. Thank you, Lord Vector, but I would prefer to complete the full task as originally stated. There are still several areas that need attention. I insist that you stop now, Vector said more firmly. With respect, sir, the challenge was announced. Publicly, if I stop early, it might seem like I could not finish the job. Vector's eyes narrowed. He was trapped by his own public declaration. If he stopped the challenge now, everyone would know he was afraid of being further embarrassed. Very well, he said through clenched teeth. Continue. But as Do-Yun returned to his work, Vector made a subtle hand signal to his assistants. They nodded and slipped away quietly. The trap was about to become much more dangerous. 2 hours after Vector sent his signal, strange things began happening around the executive tower. Equipment that had been working perfectly suddenly started breaking down. Cleaning supplies disappeared from storage areas. Tools that Do-Yun had carefully prepared were moved or damaged. Do-Yun noticed the sabotage immediately, but he said nothing. He had expected Vector to try something like this. Instead of complaining, he adapted his plans and continued working. When his specialized scanner disappeared, he pulled out a backup device from another hidden compartment. When cleaning chemicals were replaced with inferior substitutes, he used different solutions he had prepared weeks ago. When his tools were damaged, he assembled new ones from spare parts. He had hidden throughout the level. The watching crowd grew larger as the afternoon continued. Word had spread throughout Nexus Prime that something extraordinary was happening in the executive tower. Aliens from dozens of species came to observe the human who was outperforming. Veltharian engineers, Lee saw he arrived with her recording equipment. She had been documenting everything for the communication networks. Her job was to send reports about the reception to news services across the galaxy. How is he doing this? She whispered to Park Min-Soo, who had joined the crowd of observers. I do not know, Min-Soo replied. But that is not the same man who started working here a month ago. Or maybe it is, and we just never saw what he was really capable of. Ambassador Tyleth approached Do-Yun while he was repairing a malfunctioning gravity regulator in one of the conference rooms. Her silver feathers rustled as she spoke. Human, I am curious about your background, she said. Your technical knowledge seems quite advanced for someone employed in basic maintenance. Do-Yun looked up from his work. Thank you, Ambassador. I have always been interested in how things work. Interested enough to build your own diagnostic equipment? Sometimes the right tools are not available, so you make what you need. General. Korax joined the conversation. That device you built looks military grade. Where did you learn to construct such equipment? I had some technical training before I came here, Do-Yun said carefully. But mostly I just read a lot of manuals. Scholar Venom studied the gravity regulator that Do-Yun had been repairing. Fascinating. You have improved the efficiency by 30% while also reducing power consumption? Our own engineers said this model could not be modified. Most things can be improved if you understand the basic principles, Do-yeon replied. The three ambassadors exchanged meaningful looks. They were beginning to realize that there was much more to this human than anyone had suspected. Meanwhile, Lord Vector was becoming desperate. His sabotage efforts were failing completely. Every time his assistants created a new problem, the human found a way around it. Instead of proving human inferiority, the challenge was making Veltharian competence look questionable. Lord Vector, Chief Engineer Malvik said quietly, perhaps we should reconsider this demonstration. The human is making discoveries that reflect poorly on our maintenance standards. Silence, Vector hissed. I will not be embarrassed by a primitive cleaning slave. But the situation was already beyond his control. Do-yeon had found and documented dozens of serious problems throughout the executive level. Equipment that should have been replaced years ago was still in service. Safety systems had been neglected until they barely functioned. Critical maintenance had been postponed so many times that minor issues had become major hazards. As the afternoon progressed, Do-yeon began showing his findings to the visiting diplomats. He explained each problem clearly and demonstrated the solutions he had implemented. This power junction has been overloaded for months, he told Ambassador Tyleth. If it had failed during your visit, the entire diplomatic wing would have lost life support. And your engineers were unaware of this? She asked. The warning signals were disabled to stop the alarms. But the underlying problem was never fixed. General Korax examined a structural support beam that Do-yeon had reinforced. How long has this been damaged? Based on the stress patterns, I would estimate at least 6 months. If it had collapsed during the reception, several people could have been seriously injured. Scholar Venom was taking detailed notes. You can determine the age of structural damage by visual inspection? Stress fractures develop in predictable patterns over time. If you know what to look for, you can estimate when the damage began and how quickly it is progressing. The three ambassadors were impressed, but they were also concerned. If the human cleaner could identify so many serious problems, why had the Veltharian engineers missed them all? The answer became clear when Do-yeon showed them the maintenance records. Years of reports showed that problems had been identified, but repairs were constantly delayed to save money. Warning systems had been disabled rather than fixing the issues they detected. Cosmetic improvements were prioritized over safety and functionality. This is criminal negligence, Ambassador Tyleth said angrily. You invited us to a station that could have collapsed at any moment. The human is exaggerating, Lord Vector protested. He had been following the group and listening to their conversation. These are minor issues that pose no real danger. Minor issues? General Korax pointed to the structural beam Do-yeon had reinforced. This support was ready to fail. If it had collapsed during the reception ceremony, it would have killed dozens of beings. Do-yeon opened his scanner and showed them the readings. The stress levels were at 94% of failure threshold. Any significant vibration would have caused complete structural collapse. Scholar Venom studied the data. These readings are extremely precise. How did you calibrate this device? I tested it against known standards in the engineering databases. The accuracy is within 2% of laboratory equipment. Lord Vector was running out of options. The human had not only completed his impossible challenge, but had exposed years of criminal negligence in the process. The visiting ambassadors were angry, and the evidence was overwhelming. In desperation, he decided to try one final sabotage attempt. While everyone was distracted by the technical discussions, he slipped away to the main power control room. If he could cause a major system failure and then blame it on the human's modifications, perhaps he could still salvage the situation. He began randomly shutting down power circuits, hoping to create chaos that would discredit everything Do-yeon had accomplished, but Do-yeon had anticipated this possibility. His scanner immediately detected the power fluctuations and identified their source. Someone is tampering with the main power grid, he announced to the crowd. If this continues, there will be a cascade failure that could damage the entire station. Can you stop it? Ambassador Tyleth asked. I can try, but I need to reach the control room quickly. The group rushed through the corridors toward the power control center. When they arrived, they found Lord Vector frantically pressing buttons on the main control panel. Lord Vector, what are you doing? General Corax demanded. The humans' modifications have destabilized our power systems, Vector lied. I am trying to prevent a catastrophic failure. But his explanation made no sense. The power problems had started in areas that Do-Yun had not even worked on. The evidence clearly showed deliberate sabotage rather than accidental damage. Step away from the controls, Scholar Venom ordered. You are making the situation worse. Do-Yun moved to the control panel and began working rapidly. His fingers flew over the complex controls as he traced the source of each problem and implemented corrections. Within minutes, the power system stabilized and normal operation resumed. Remarkable, Ambassador Tyleth said. You stopped a complete cascade failure? The damage was not as severe as it appeared, Do-Yun replied modestly. Most of the critical systems have backup protection. But everyone in the room understood what had really happened. Lord Vector had tried to sabotage his own station rather than admit that a human had outperformed his engineers. The visiting ambassadors were no longer just impressed by the humans' technical skills. They were appalled by the corruption and incompetence of the Veltharian administration, the challenge that was supposed to humiliate humanity had instead exposed the worst aspects of Veltharian arrogance and prejudice. And it was far from over. The evening reception began with tension filling the air like electricity. The main hall was packed with diplomatic guests from across the galaxy, but the mood was far different than Lord Vector had planned. Instead of celebrating Veltharian superiority, the ambassadors were questioning everything they saw. Do-Yun had completed his impossible challenge with hours to spare. The executive level was not only clean, but functioning better than it had in years. Every system he had touched now operated at peak efficiency. Problems that had plagued the station for months were completely resolved, but the real damage to Vector's reputation was just beginning. Ambassador Tyleth stood at the center of a group of diplomats sharing what she had witnessed during the day. The human identified dozens of critical safety violations that could have killed us all. Their own engineers either missed these problems or chose to ignore them. General Corax nodded grimly. The structural damage alone was criminal. If that support beam had failed during a ceremony, it would have been a massacre. What disturbs me most, Scholar Venom added, is that they disabled warning systems rather than fixing the problems. This shows a pattern of deliberate negligence. Word of the day's events had spread throughout the station. Aliens from many species gathered in small groups, discussing what they had learned. The Veltharian reputation for technical excellence was crumbling rapidly. Lord Vector tried to control the damage by making announcements about how grateful he was for the humans' assistance. But his words rang hollow after everyone had witnessed his sabotage attempts. Citizens and honored guests, Vector called out from the main podium. Today's demonstration has been very educational. We are pleased that our human employee was able to contribute to the station's maintenance. The crowd's response was cold silence. Nobody believed his attempt to take credit for what had happened. Lee Sahi approached the podium with her recording equipment. As the communications officer, she had the right to broadcast official statements from station leadership. Lord Vector, she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Can you explain why so many critical systems were allowed to deteriorate? The human found problems that should have been obvious to trained engineers. Vector looked uncomfortable. There may have been some minor oversights in our maintenance schedules, but nothing that posed serious danger. Minor oversights? Ambassador Tyleth interrupted. We have documented evidence of structural failures, power system overloads, life support malfunctions, and safety violations. This is not minor negligence. The crowd began murmuring angrily. Representatives from species across the galaxy were realizing that they had been invited to a station that could have killed them all. Do-yun stood quietly near the back of the hall. He had changed from his work clothes into a simple but clean uniform for the reception. Most people would still see him as just a maintenance worker, but his calm confidence suggested there was more to his story. Scholar Venom noticed him and approached with curiosity. "Human, I must ask you something directly. Your technical knowledge and equipment suggest military training. Were you perhaps an engineer before becoming a cleaner?" The hall grew quiet as people waited for his answer. This was the question many had been wondering about all day. Do-yun was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke in a clear voice that carried throughout the room. "I served as a fleet engineering officer in the human colonial navy for 12 years. I was responsible for maintaining life support and power systems on deep space vessels. After the war ended, I chose civilian work because I wanted to build things instead of fighting." The revelation hit the crowd like a physical blow. This was not just some random human who had gotten lucky. This was a trained military engineer with years of experience in the most demanding technical environment possible. "You were an officer in your military?" General Korax asked with new respect in his voice. "Lieutenant Commander Kim Do-yun, retired." Do-yun replied, "I specialized in emergency repairs and system optimization under combat conditions." "Combat conditions?" Ambassador Tylef looked fascinated. "You performed engineering work while under enemy fire?" "Sometimes. When your ship is damaged in battle, you have to fix critical systems quickly or everyone dies. It teaches you to find solutions with whatever resources are available." The implications of this information spread through the crowd quickly. The human had not just stumbled onto solutions through luck. He had applied advanced military engineering training to solve problems that civilian engineers had missed completely. Lord Vector realized that his situation had become catastrophic. He had publicly challenged a retired military officer to an impossible task, then tried to sabotage him when he succeeded. The diplomatic consequences would be severe. "Why did you not tell us about your background?" Vector demanded. "You never asked," Do-yun replied simply. "You hired me to clean offices, and I did that job to the best of my ability. But I also noticed that many systems needed repair, so I fixed them quietly during my work time." "You have been performing unauthorized modifications to our station?" Vector accused. "I have been maintaining systems that were being neglected," Do-yun corrected. "Every repair I made was documented and followed standard safety protocols. The work I did prevented several catastrophic failures." Scholar Venom pulled out his data pad. "I have been analyzing the human's modifications throughout the day. Every change he made improved efficiency and safety. His work prevented at least 3 major system failures that could have killed hundreds of beings." "This is unacceptable," General Korax said angrily. "You invited us to a station that was falling apart, then tried to blame the being who fixed it when your negligence was exposed." Ambassador Tylef activated her official recording device. "I am formally notifying the Galactic Safety Council about the conditions we discovered here today. This station should be shut down until proper repairs are completed." Lord Vector felt his world collapsing. A safety investigation would expose years of corruption and cost-cutting that had put thousands of lives at risk. His career would be destroyed and he might face criminal charges. "Please, Ambassador," he said desperately. "There is no need for such extreme measures. We can resolve these issues internally." "Internally?" She looked at him with disgust. "You just tried to sabotage your own power systems rather than admit that a human was more competent than your engineers. We cannot trust you to handle a broken food dispenser, much less a space station full of people." Lisahi had been recording everything for her communication reports. But she also had access to the station's internal databases through her job. While everyone was focused on the confrontation, she had been quietly gathering evidence. "Lord Vector," she called out, "I have found something interesting in the maintenance archives." She activated a large display screen that showed repair records going back several years. The data painted a clear picture of systematic negligence and corruption. These records show that critical repairs were repeatedly delayed to reduce costs. Safety inspections were falsified. Warning systems were disabled to avoid paying for fixes. This has been going on for over 3 years. The crowd studied the evidence in horrified silence. The problems Do-yeon had found were not recent developments. They were the result of years of deliberate criminal negligence. Furthermore, Sahi continued, I found communications between Lord Vector and his department heads discussing how to hide problems from visiting inspectors. They knew about these dangers and chose to cover them up rather than fix them. Lord Vector tried to protest, but the evidence was overwhelming. His own messages were displayed for everyone to read. There was no way to deny what had been happening. General Korak stepped forward with the authority of his military rank. Lord Vector, you are hereby charged with criminal negligence and endangering the lives of diplomatic personnel. 1 a.m. placing. You under protective custody pending a full investigation. 2 Korgan security officers moved to escort Vector from the hall. As they led him away, he turned back toward Do-yeon with hatred in his eyes. This is not overhuman, he snarled. You have made a powerful enemy today. Do-yeon watched him leave without expression. I was never trying to make enemies, Lord Vector. I was just trying to do my job properly. The reception continued, but the mood had completely changed. Instead of celebrating Valtharian superiority, the guests were discussing the importance of competence over prejudice and the value of giving all beings a chance to prove their worth. Ambassador Tyleth found Do-yeon near the refreshment area. Lieutenant Commander, I have a proposal for you. The Zephyrian Council is always looking for skilled engineers. We would be honored to offer you a position as our chief technical advisor. Before Do-yeon could respond, General Korak's approached from the other side. The Korgan Empire has need of beings with your capabilities. I can offer you a position as engineering colonel with your own technical division. Scholar Venom joined the conversation. The Threnody Alliance values practical intelligence above all else. We would welcome you as a senior research fellow with unlimited resources for your projects. Do-yeon found himself surrounded by some of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, all offering him prestigious positions. It was a dramatic change from being treated as inferior cleaning staff just hours earlier. But his answer surprised them all. Do-yeon looked at the 3 powerful ambassadors who had offered him prestigious positions across the galaxy. Their offers were generous and would give him wealth, status, and respect. Any sensible person would accept immediately. I am honored by your offers, he said carefully, but I think I would like to stay here on Nexus Prime. The ambassadors looked surprised. Scholar Venom spoke first. You wish to remain as a cleaner after what has happened? Not exactly as a cleaner, Do-yeon replied. But this station has many problems that need solving. If I leave now, someone else will have to deal with the mess. That does not seem fair. Ambassador. Tyleth studied his face. You feel responsible for completing the repairs you started? In part, yes. But also I think this station could become something better. Today proved that different species can work together when they focus on competence instead of prejudice. I would like to help build that kind of future. General Korak nodded with approval, spoken like a true warrior. You choose duty over personal gain. 3 days later, the Galactic Safety Council arrived to conduct their investigation. They found exactly what Lee Sahi had documented. Years of criminal negligence had turned Nexus Prime into a disaster waiting to happen. Lord Vector was removed from his position and faced criminal charges. Most of his corrupt department heads were also dismissed. The station needed completely new leadership. The council appointed Administrator Jorvik as the new station commander. Jorvik was an experienced Valtharian who had built his reputation on competence rather than politics. His first official act was to offer Do-yeon the position of Chief Systems Engineer. The station needs someone who can fix our problems quickly and efficiently, Jorvik explained. Your performance during the challenge proved that you are the right being for this job. Do-yeon accepted the promotion, but he made several requests. He wanted to work with integrated teams that included beings from many different species. He wanted fair treatment for all workers regardless of their background. And he wanted the authority to implement real solutions instead of cosmetic fixes. Jorvik agreed to all his conditions. The new administration was committed to making Nexus Prime a model of intraspecies cooperation. Park Minsu was promoted to assistant maintenance supervisor. Vek became the head of mechanical systems. Gorak took charge of structural engineering. Lisahi was made director of communications with expanded authority to ensure transparency in all station operations. The changes went far beyond simple promotions. Doyan implemented new training programs that taught all workers about multiple systems. Species that had never worked together before began sharing knowledge and techniques. The Valtharian engineers who remained had to prove their competence through practical demonstrations rather than relying on their supposed natural superiority. Many of them discovered that they learned more from working with other species than they ever had in their isolated departments. Within 6 months, Nexus Prime was transformed. The station operated at peak efficiency with safety ratings that exceeded galactic standards. Productivity increased dramatically while costs decreased. Most importantly, the workplace became a place where beings were judged by their abilities rather than their species. Doyan often worked late in his new office reviewing system reports and planning improvements. One evening, Lisahi found him there studying blueprints for a new environmental system. "You know you do not have to solve every problem yourself," she said. "You have a good team now." "I know," Doyan replied. "But I keep thinking about what happened during the challenge. If I had failed that day, everyone would have assumed it proved human inferiority. Success or failure affects more than just the individual. So you feel pressure to be perfect? Not perfect. Just competent enough to prove that everyone deserves a fair chance." Sahi sat down across from his desk. "Can I tell you something? The day of the challenge I was terrified you would fail. Not because I thought humans were inferior, but because I knew how much it would hurt you personally." "You were worried about me?" "Of course. You were facing an impossible task designed to humiliate you. Anyone would be worried about a friend in that situation." Doyan looked up from his blueprints. "Friend? Yes, friend. Or maybe something more. If you are interested." He smiled for the second time since arriving at the station. "I think I would like that very much." 1 year after the Grand Reception disaster, Ambassador Tyleth returned to Nexus Prime on official business. She was amazed by what she found. The station that had once been a symbol of Valtharian arrogance had become a showcase of interspecies cooperation. She requested a tour from Chief Systems Engineer Kim Do-yeon. As they walked through the efficiently running facility, he pointed out improvements that had been implemented by beings from dozens of different species. The atmospheric processing system was redesigned by a team of Threnody scientists and Korgan engineers working together, he explained. The new power distribution network combines Zephyrian precision with human adaptability and Valtharian artistic sensibilities. Remarkable, Tyleth said. You have created something entirely new here. We all created it together. That is what makes it work. They stopped at an observation deck that looked out over the main commerce levels. Thousands of beings from hundreds of species worked and lived together in apparent harmony. I must ask you something, Tyleth said. Do you ever regret turning down our offer? You could have been living comfortably on the Zephyrian homeworld with unlimited resources for your research. Do-yeon considered the question seriously. Sometimes I wonder what my life would have been like if I had made different choices. But I think this is where I needed to be. Not just for my own satisfaction, but because it needed to be done. And Lord Vector, do you ever think about him? Do-yeon pointed to a maintenance area where several beings were working together to repair a cargo loader. One of them was a former Valtharian administrator who had been demoted after the investigation. He works in environmental services now, Do-yeon said. It was his choice. He could have transferred to another station, but he asked to stay. Why? Would he want to remain here? He told me he needed to learn what real work felt like. That he had spent so many years in management that he forgot how to actually do anything useful. They watched as the former lord worked alongside beings he would once have considered inferior. His expensive clothes had been replaced with a simple work uniform. His arrogant attitude had been replaced with careful attention to his assigned tasks. He approaches me sometimes to ask technical questions, Do-Yan continued. He is not a bad being. He was just taught that his species made him naturally superior to everyone else. When that belief was proven wrong, he had to rebuild his entire understanding of himself. Do you think he has learned his lesson? I think he is still learning. We all are. As the sun set over Nexus Prime, the station's lights created a beautiful pattern against the dark space around it. Ships arrived and departed carrying beings from across the galaxy, who came to see the station that had proved different species could work together as equals. The transformation was not perfect. There were still conflicts and misunderstandings. Some beings held on to old prejudices and others expected change to happen faster than was realistic, but progress was being made one day at a time. Beings who had never spoken to each other before were becoming friends and colleagues. Problems that had seemed impossible were being solved through cooperation and shared knowledge. Kim Do-Yun had started as a simple cleaner trying to do his job well. He had ended up helping to create a new model for how different species could work together. It was not the future he had planned, but it was exactly the future the galaxy needed. And in the end, that was enough. The alien master had wanted to embarrass the human cleaner to prove his species' superiority. Instead, he had learned that true superiority comes from competence, cooperation, and the wisdom to judge beings by their actions rather than their appearance. It was a lesson that echoed across the galaxy as the story of Nexus Prime spread to other stations and worlds. Everywhere beings heard the tale, they began to question their own assumptions about which species were naturally superior and which were naturally inferior. The human cleaner had taught them all that there was no such thing as natural hierarchy. There was only the choice between working together or failing separately. And that choice would determine the future of every civilization in the galaxy.